are surrounded, so though we are surrounded by green, and that is the excuse for building authorities to allow Har Nof to become more and more dense and add more buildings, etc., the reality is the forest is not accessible and not as useful as we would like, which is why we're also promoting a promenade and have been doing that for about 20 years. But it's taking the city an awfully long time to, because of all the politics about the concerns that they're wanting to build around us, that they, every time there's a new plan, they hold off and push off the building of the promenade. Anyway, so I will describe this program. It's a small piece of a lot of what we did for many, many years. We taught the community, or at large in Jerusalem, we worked on education, working with the handicapped, working with local communities, teaching the religious to care about the environment, both in Har Nof and outside of. We were the first religious combined group, but to teach the ultra Orthodox about the green, and now there are many. And so we did a lot of pioneering work in those years, including hiking in the forest, and we had a space called the Shomara, where we taught permaculture and other topics, which again have spread since then. We took the JNF, or the KKL, with us to meet Larry Halpern, who was the person who had created the Tayelet in the, where is it? It doesn't work. In the other part of Jerusalem, there's a famous Tayelet, and we went and called Larry Halpern and asked him if he was interested in building a Tayelet here. He said yes. We went to meet him. I mean, he came here, but we also went to San Francisco to meet him there. And we brought the KKL with us, and they then got involved in this whole program of community forests. We were the first community forest. We also, in fighting these Highway 16, we found a way to build a tunnel under Har Nof and under the forest so that we would not destroy the land between us and Beit Zayed. And that is why Highway 16 is in a tunnel today. So these are just things that sort of came out of starting to wanting to save the forest, to prevent local building, things that happened as side effects. So this particular building, every time they want to do it, it gets bigger and bigger in this particular location. You can see here this red around. This is the Tayelet in its most developed area. The Tayelet actually goes all around Har Nof. It has multiple paths going inside and then the whole idea of the blink paths throughout all of Yar Yerushalayim started here, and now Kakal has developed a map for other paths and other things to go through. So it's become a much bigger thing, but the Tayelet still waits to be built, and we need to build it, because if not, the natural thing is to want to build on and in the forest and get rid of more and more of the green. And this particular area for us is a problem because it's a precedent for anything, for any sort of building or massive building. We have fought it now 3 times and have won in the Moed Saratzit, where the building in this area cannot be above street level. However, every plan that comes in, because it started off as green, but is now orange, if you know the different zoning plans, orange means private institutions, people buy it. Once they buy it, they don't want to lose money. So it goes from owner to owner to owner. We keep fighting and fighting and fighting. This is the 4th time round in about 20 years. And now the committees feel differently than they did before. Who knows? Okay, this is the view that you have here. Basically, all of Har Nof and many, many apartments look towards that area. As you can see again, Har Nof was planned initially to have green spaces all along this. Kablanim came and closed up most of the areas, but there is a little bit of green here, there. Here's this place, this location. And again, the view that we have and want to preserve for 1,001 reasons for Har Nof, and also the connection to the forest. It is, again, the most easy access location within the community. We won in the previous plans that this should be the top of a building. It is a paved square, and that was what's supposed to be anything built, maybe 6 levels, 6 stories below, which is how far they can go. And this was what we have gotten to so far in the Moetza Artzit. This is the new building plan. They want to build towers here, 16 stories high, which would basically go against any zoning, which is one is supposed to do on the edge of green. And here, though it's theoretically green, it's not really, it's a parking lot. As you can see, there's sort of something here. And this parking lot means that this whole thing is basically cement. Water runoff is terrible. It can cause flooding. It can do an awful lot of things. But and also, if you've noticed, these buildings, any view from here, you pretty well block most of the view of the green. And here are the buildings. It's again, it's as if by the done and shown as if that it is green. It is not. As you can see, these curved lines, this is cement. And on top of this is supposed to be public buildings of high schools and schools and stuff. Nothing left of this area, which is one of our most valued green spaces. These are the buildings. So that's the end of the presentation about why we're fighting it again for the millionth time. And I'd like to move on from here. I think you don't see anything anymore, right? I've blocked that. Okay, it's want you out of there.
Correct.
So what I wanted to move into is the whole issue of forests and the benefit of the Jerusalem forest in terms of things that we all, I think you all know, particularly since you're fighting for these for an urban forest. But there are additional elements that maybe have not always been thought about. And why don't you first tell me what you know, the benefits or feel the benefits of an urban forest are, if people know? If not, I'll go into it. But is there anybody who wants to talk or say anything?
You want to stop share and then we can see each other a little bit better.
So I'll start with the information that I have, and you can then add. Urban forests basically are the Jerusalem forest was built in the 1950s, 54, 55. At its largest, it was 4.7 dunam, I believe. And no, 4.7, yeah, 4.7 thousand, 4.7 thousand dunam, 4,700 dunam at the time. It is now about 1,250 dunam. So it's about 25% to 30% of its size. Most of the building has gone to basically build the communities that are now part of it, which is, well, at first it stretched all the way on the western side of Jerusalem, from Har Herzl down to Ein Kerem across the ridges that are now built as neighborhoods. But now what remains after the expansion of Har Nof, Givat Shaul, Kiryat Yovel, Beit HaKerem, Yad Vashem, Mar Herzl Cemetery, and roads, especially all sorts of roads and highways. So what you're left is, instead of this continuous green area, you have polygons of green surrounded by communities. So it's hardly the green expanse that we had initially. It's a bunch of sort of hodgepodge of but planned, fragmented wooded areas between neighborhoods. And so what was used to be open hills all the way to the west of the city is now more building with some green in between.
Tamar, do you have slides of that?
I don't have, because I only heard this morning that you wanted all this data, and I didn't put to do it. So maybe you do.
Can you turn off your sharing screen so we can see each other?
I'm sorry. How can I turn it off? Here, I'll close it. Here. Do you now see each other?
Yeah, I have a question. Are the individual units that you described, are they contiguous?
Oh, the forest has been broken up into a lot of different polygons of forest.
But there's no connection between them.
Oh, that was when they built the neighborhoods, they disconnected them.
Right.
So 1,250 dunam now here in this area, something next to Beit HaKerem. They broke it up that way. It wasn't actually just reduced, it was systematically fragmented along ridge lines and road corridors. So they planned how they did it, and they continuously always want to continue building on additional things, thinking that green is for free, and therefore we don't really understand that the importance of preserving it. Now, if you talk about urban forest, what is the benefit? I will talk about something first, perhaps. We live in dense urban environments. There is a cost to living in density, which people many times don't think about. I mean, I think some of the things they do think about is air pollution and from traffic and industry. And so ultimately, you'll have health issues related like asthma, respiratory problems, cardiovascular problems, stress, higher risk of lung disease. That's one. There's noise pollution. With the constant exposure to traffic, construction, crowds, there are sleep disturbances, stress levels increase, higher blood pressure, sort of smaller things. Limited green space, which limits your ability to be out in nature and exercise and just exposed. And that again can lead to obesity, heart disease, vitamin D deficiency, etc. And heating up of the cities because you don't have the trees to naturally cool them, and this heat there causes heat distress, dehydration, chronic illnesses, etc. But I remember doing a study where I was reading about density per se and in animal studies, and they found that in addition to these environmental and health issues, when you took rats or mice basically, and they had in denser environments than were expected, they found that it broke up the social fabric and behavior. The mores broke. The male mice were chasing female mice who were way too young to procreate. They became homosexual. They became all kinds of other norms were
Or
broken.
I couldn't get to the phone. I got to the phone and then I called you back and it rang and rang and rang and rang.
So density has an effect way beyond what we expect. In addition of another study I remember seeing of a slum in, I think it was in America, but I forget where. They did an experiment where they planted trees near certain buildings, just one tree near a building in the slum area. And they found that in those buildings, there was less violence than in other buildings in the area. One tree. If you look at IQ was supposedly increased in children who are in nature and whatever. There are a tremendous amount of benefits to health, which I can go into, and that whole area of that you now have of forest therapy that is developing in dense cities. They started it in Japan. People go out into nature in order to relax and calm themselves and basically heal themselves. So there's a lot of things to do there. I'll get into something a little bit later, but I'll give you the key benefits of the Jerusalem forest per se. By the way, the green spaces can reduce violence, they reduce stress, irritability, mental fatigue, fewer aggressive impulses, social cohesion is greater. That's why community gardens bring about a much better relationship within the communities that they have, community interaction, social trust is better, vandalism is less, lower rates of conflict. Environmental influence also provide buffer spaces where keep rate crime and other things down. There are other things that you can see in a lot of the things that happen here. And I'll just add a few more benefits, and then we'll go to the benefits specifically of the Jerusalem forest. I think people lose the ability to hear themselves and to be with themselves. And being in nature when you're walking, it's a natural way, aside from us doing so many things to make our lives and quality of life better, like meditation, like whatever, this is natural meditation. Being in nature, you are in touch with the flow of things. You get a sense of an expanse greater than yourself. You get in touch with the circadian rhythm. You see dark and light. Your body reacts to these things and to whatever. And you exercise naturally because you're moving in nature. You're not doing a thing again. So when you're out in nature, I think as all of you probably know, you're all of a sudden you in an environment that is totally different from any being in any, even in a natural park surrounded by buildings. There's something else that takes you out of yourself, out of touch with the universe, anything spiritual, whatever. There is that benefit which makes us ourselves and human more, and we calm down, we notice things, we attend to ourselves and others. I think that is something I don't always see commented on when I see these studies of what the benefits of nature are. The fact that we go back to owning ourselves, in addition to just a general comment about health, because that's another hobby of mine, circulation of any sort is what does most of the healing in our systems, whether it be for vision, the Bates method, or whether it be exercise, or whether it be something else. The ability to enhance circulation and breathing are things that heal in general. So being in nature and being in touch with nature allow you to use these things to your benefit. If I move now to the key benefits of the Jerusalem forest and the regular ecological sense, the forest helps filter pollution and carbon dioxide. It reduces dust. It helps counter the heat island effect. It provides cooler air in general. This particular forest provides cooling for the city because Jerusalem can get very hot. We live in a forest, in a desert. It creates shaded areas. It lowers temperatures. It makes the communities and neighborhoods nearby more comfortable to live in. It protects the soil, which we all know, prevents erosion on the hills, helps rainwater soak into the ground and the runoff, and reduces flooding, which is one of the problems with that building. It will create a flooding in the forest, the Bates side in particular, down below. Biodiversity is something I think is being worked on by many groups. We have animals, mammals, insects, native plants. As people now start to manage the forest, not so much as a man-made forest, but more as a natural habitat, they're bringing in and planting natural trees, natural to the area, and changing the ecosystem, semi-natural ecosystem. The area is also used for walking, hiking, cycling, picnics. And if you've ever come on Yom Ha'atzmaut or any other day to the Jerusalem forest, there is not an inch to be had. People show up at 5 or 6 in the morning, putting up tents, trying to save a space. And by the time you get there, usually later, you're sitting on top of a manhole. It's an urban buffer. It acts as a green belt. It limits uncontrolled urban sprawl, separates neighborhoods and infrastructure, and preserves open land around Jerusalem, which is something that I think people do not appreciate. Once you've destroyed open land, it's very hard to get back. And in the States and other places, they are buying back areas that have built on, like railroad areas or other tracks, and greening them because they find that people need the green. It makes a difference. It adds to the value of the neighborhoods. It makes life in general much better for inner environments, slums, whatever. Makes a big difference. So, but if you can, don't destroy the green, but if you have to, maybe buy it back. In Jerusalem, we have cultural values, so the scenic views of historic areas or preserve the landscape. And those are all the benefits. There are some downsides to the green. You have fires and water dependence and urban pressure trying to build, etc. But to the extent that it is now planned, or people plan the building of the cities and preserving, hopefully, the green as much as they can, because there isn't so much left. That will make or break the quality of the city for the future. I think that's a quickie version.
Thank you, Tamar. I'd love to open up for questions. I'm sure there's a lot of information, so I'm sure people maybe have questions or comments or clarifications. Tamar can answer, I can answer. If anybody lives near an urban forest, like I said, a lot of you are new faces for me, so I don't know exactly where everybody lives. So also curious from that point of view, if anybody experiences these things firsthand, lives near a forest, next to a forest, or you frequent a forest even though it might not be next to your home.
Go ahead, Richard.
So how much of a partnership is KKL, or the Jewish National Fund, in the effort of building a tayelet, or in terms of supporting what the residents of Har Nof want?
KKL was the city, the KKL, the Minhal Kilati were the first partners when we started to establish the idea of this Tayelet. The KKL then dropped off because they considered it an urban forest or whatever, and has stopped being involved in it at all, practically, in the Tayelet. I'm now negotiating with the city, which is why we're having so much trouble, because the city, because they keep wanting to have people want to build in these areas and the politics of building in the city holds off. It's doesn't want to invest, or it's in conflict with some building project or another that someone wants. So the KKL is not really involved, and the city, we have to keep pushing all the time, and they claim they love the project and they hold it up.
Just a suggestion. Hello?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just a suggestion. You may want to bypass KKL and appeal directly to Lenny Robinson, who is the overall CEO of the Jewish National Fund, who oversees or at least partners with KKL. If he adopts this as a project specifically for donors in North America, it could happen. And if you give him some bullet points as to why this project has tremendous value for Jerusalem and for the region, okay, perhaps he might take it on. He's done this in other areas.
Okay. It's a great idea because it is a very innovative project. I can show you something about the Tayelet, maybe if you want to see it, but Tayelet is the first, or was the first, I think it still hasn't been done. It's a Tayelet that takes into account the needs of the religious public. So you have an Eruv Mehudar around it, built out of an old system, but with walls and other things, to allow people to go into the forest and play there. It has play areas, which Har Nof doesn't have, but again, built on things related to the forest. It has community gardens, and since we are near an institution that teaches the halakha, we can also teach people about halakha related to agriculture. It's an amazing project.
No. I concur. The reason why I'm suggesting this is we live in the Arnona area, which is right near the Tayelet, that all the tourist groups come to when they want a scenic view of Jerusalem. So if you use that as a basis or a reference point, perhaps you can get to first base, because you're talking about an existence of a Tayelet in the southern part of Jerusalem, and Har Nof is in the northern part. So you're in a sense creating bookends. I'm being metaphoric, but you can develop the concept, and perhaps you only need him to adopt it. If you can energize him, he will make it happen.
If you can maybe send me your phone number and I can ask you more about how to do this, I would love to be in touch with you.
Okay, sure.
And that's a wonderful idea. I have been looking for a sponsor within the KKL. I mean, I had connections before, but since they decided to switch and the politics, I don't know, this would be wonderful. I would love to. It's on the western, by the way, we look over the entrance to the city, actually. I don't know if oversees the whole highways and all the hills coming in. So it would be a wonderful Tayelet for many people, aside from its unique characteristics. Thank you.
I've got a general question, if I can, Tamar. This is Ted Miller speaking. My wife, Razy, always points out how beautiful the area is as we turn out of Givat Shaul to come back into the city, where they've got hanging on the wall. They have hanging buckets, little containers with green stuff growing. Do you know what I'm referring to? On the wall of the highway as you come from Givat Shaul into the city, and that's a good utilization of vertical space for greening. And I mean, there's the footprint of that, the horizontal footprint is next to zero. And she's raised, I'm going to give her credit because it's her idea. She's raised the idea of houses and buildings doing that. I'm just wondering whether you're aware of the use of such greenery if a tree in a slum in wherever can do it, can we improve the quality of life by greening buildings?
I think it should be a great idea. I have not thought about it. I've been focused on other things, but
Yeah, okay.
very good idea. In general, I think if we did it throughout Jerusalem, it would be nice.
Yeah, okay.
Laura?
I will, Anne can help me out with this. We were in the National Conference of Hadassah Women not long ago.
Yes, the Jerusalem Green Fund and other organizations are working towards those kind of things.
Okay. And the speaker who was a past minister of environment brought out statistics that hospital patients that are exposed to greenery outside their windows and close to being able to see or overlook green have a high percentage. I think Anne, he said 75% improvement and recovery statistically as compared to hospital patients that don't have any access to even looking out to green. So one of my questions, Nachonan, that he said about 75%. You remember that? Yeah, I was really impressed by it because I was there for a long time overlooking the green part of the Jerusalem forest, which the Jerusalem Green Fund is also fighting to keep. So I'm wondering, because I myself have a garden, and I, as you explained it, Tamar, just having your own garden and walking in nature in a forest, to me, is very different. It's a very different kind of awareness and breathing and so on and so forth. So where I know it's important for the oxygen to have as much green hanging around the city in all different kinds of formats or forms. I'm wondering if really it's important for me to be able to step out into the remote forest rather than just playing around. If there's any kind of statistics or research, the difference between, a big home garden and being out in the forest.
I haven't done the statistics. I didn't realize how much what would be the focus would be. But yes, it is obvious that it is, because if a park was enough, you wouldn't have developed this whole field of forest therapy. There wouldn't be a lot of these other things taking people out into nature. I think for yourself, just see where you feel calmer. I mean, you have to feel safe in the forest, so go somewhere you feel safe, or with people you feel comfortable with, but just go and see, and the effect on yourself. I think you're sensitive enough. A garden is wonderful, but you're looking usually at a garden at other buildings around you. You're aware of your neighbors or noise, maybe. If not, maybe you're in some isolated area and feels differently. But just check it out and see. For some people, it may make a big difference. Maybe some people it won't. Depending how large your garden is, I mean.
About oxygen, like oxygen intake, forest and gardens.
So oxygen from the forest will affect the whole city overall. And in the forest, you might feel it also differently in a desert. I mean, just being out. But there clearly probably is some difference. I don't know how much, depending on what you're looking at. But to walk unimpeded for a period of time in nature and to be able to go some sort of distance and have nothing you're encountering that's going to disrupt you is a different feeling than sitting in a garden and you're having your things around you.
My other question was, as you were just describing the reallocation, the different zoning from green to orange, is it, and it's a not diplomatic question, but now that it's orange, is it kind of like a more closer to a done deal and there's already contractors that are bidding for it, or it's still able to do as Richard recommended, to go to a different level? Like, how far along is the building plan process of that orange area now, right outside of Har Nof?
problem. We are in the fourth, because it's orange and they have to sell it to keep getting their money back. We are again in the fourth time in the middle of a fight against a new project, which is now 3 16-story buildings that they want.
Yeah.
And we have already won it twice to be down at street level, but given the new zoning boards and how they approach it, I don't know. And also the nature of the current building, which is, I don't know if you know, Kvutzot Rechisha, where you buy it as a group and you buy your, now have many owners. I'm looking to find an alternate site, which I always have looked for, and I had less help from people, but now there might be some other alternatives to find a site. Whether the owner wants to move will depend on whether the zoning boards tell them they can or cannot build what they want, and it's not economically viable, and then maybe we can negotiate with them movement to another area. But you have to be, it's a very tiring, and every time a new project thing comes along, we have to fight it some other way. And I'm looking to find an alternate site and hope that ultimately I can negotiate with the X number of people who live there to move elsewhere. And then we might have a.
I want to say that those last few comments and questions are also a great promo. I see most of the people in this room did sign up for the next unit of our program, but the discussion of the conflict between urban planning, densification, and saving green space is going to be the main focus of the next unit, which is entitled Urban Planning. So to get into the nitty gritty of that, and there's a lot of jargon there, that's going to be in Unit 2, which happens after PASAP. But, you know, in the planning of this, and Jeff and Eileen can definitely say so, right? All of our topics are at some point overlapping each other because everything is related to one another. So even if we were focusing on forests, clearly we're also speaking about urban planning and why urban planning, the norms of urban planning need to change in light of all the amazing things that Tamar had mentioned so far of why they are critical for our health and our well-being, etc. And I did want to circle back around to the Miller's comments around other sorts of methodologies of greening the city. In other words, if we have areas which are already urbanized, which are already built up, are there ways to green those areas as well? Taking the example of the green walls on the drive in or out of Jerusalem from the west. And the answer to that is absolutely. And, you know, the trained eye might find those places wandering around the city, but they are happening. A lot of times they're just individuals who are green lovers or garden aficionados and things like that all around the city, especially in the really dense neighborhoods. Like if you walk around Nachlaot, Makor Baruch, you know, in the city center area, but also there are larger projects, and there are laws around. Again, it's touching on the urban planning more, but you know, how much green space legally does a builder need to leave when a builder plans a building for X amount of residents, or they're taking up X amount of dunam on the ground, and then how much space do they need to preserve on the ground for green space? And then that is even also, you know, left to, how do you say, parshanut, right? Like you could debate what that really even means. So it is really fascinating and complicated at the same time. But to go back to forests, planting a green wall does not equal a forest in terms of the amount of, in terms of two things, I'll say. One, the amount of carbon sequestration that happens. In other words, right, if we remember like maybe in second grade or third grade, and we learned the carbon cycle, right, where trees are taking in the CO2 that we breathe out, and they're exhaling the oxygen that we breathe in, right? So the amount of carbon that trees are, forests are absorbing from our cities, from our cars, from all different sorts of things is far more expansive and far more or it does it better, let's say, than a green wall. I'm not saying that they're not important. We need to have both. In other words, we need to have, as Tamar said, that space around that is supporting urban life of forests, but everywhere possible within the developed areas, within the urban setting, we need to have more green. So as somebody else mentioned, community gardens, or was mentioned a few times, those are critical little blotches all around the city. Even our own personal gardens, only if you even have a Mir pest set, that's also super critical. And as Tamar also mentioned about the biodiversity, every time there's a place where green something is growing, is going to attract butterflies and bees who are essential. I can't even stress how much they are essential for biodiversity to progress and to expand even in urban settings. So that's really, really critical. So thank you for mentioning all those comments. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments about that? I see Marla.
I just want to say that I have a little garden outside my house, and it makes a major difference to me. It's not that I don't. I think it's wonderful, and I really every day bless the fact that I see the green. But it is, I think I feel different walking out into a forest. And if we look at even in the Tanakh, Arei Miklat always had a wild space around them that you could not chop down the trees, you could not whatever. There was always that border. So even in our own tradition, we have a respect for the natural zone outside the city zone. And it's not even discussing parks, etc., in the city, but the importance of that area.
Certainly. Thank you. Marla, you want to say something? No, we don't.
Can't hear you, Marla.
But you're not on mute.
You're not on it.
Avi, we can't hear Marla at all.
Oh, where did that?
She's very passionate.
I see.
Don't wake up the baby. Can you hear? No?
Slightly. Okay, try it again. Marla,
can you
try
hear?
it again.
Oh,
Can
yes.
you hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, we had some speaker problems, so I missed part of what you said, Batel. But there's as far as planning things, if there's already a town plan, taba on an area, unless you put in another taba, it can't be canceled. So you can't say that we don't want this building at all. Some other town plan has to be put in. So if, for instance, Karen Kayemet wanted to take over the land, they would have to put in like another plan to actually make it green space. The fact that it's already zoned for building plus some green, like it's really hard to cancel town plans. I had this with Lifta. I was involved with trying to save Lifta. In the meantime, Lifta didn't get built because the requirements to do all the preservation work, I think, is just too expensive and too large for any kablan to take on. But that was also years and years of fighting, and I don't think the camp plan is canceled. It's really hard to sort of stop the planning from going on. The other thing I wanted to add is a lot of times, and we see this around our neighborhood, we've had a lot of TAMA projects and other things, and the city comes and like takes down a tree on the sidewalk and widens the sidewalk because they think they're going to widen the street, or they took down some dead trees. I'm in our Nona Old Talpiot area, and we're not getting new ones planted. They're taking down the ones that fall down. They leave the trunk there for like a year, and then it disappears and the sidewalk gets covered up. I don't know. With this fund, do you know how to approach the city to try to get some of the trees back that have been taken out?
Yeah, I could address the tree factor. Maybe tomorrow you want to talk about the Taba issue in your neighborhood. I'll just mention about trees. It's its own subject, I would say, but in short, there's a legal process that needs to happen for a tree to come down in any space, even in your own private property. There is a legal process. So certainly in the public domain, there is a legal process that needs to happen.
Top down.
And any person, for example, could look up on the municipal website and check at any given moment in any place in the city where a tree is slated to be cut down. And the moment that it's called a rishayon, a license, a tree cutting down license, anytime that goes up, like the moment it goes up, there are 30 days in which any individual can object to it. I won't get into all the details, but there is a process. However, there's also a different process that says if the municipality takes down a tree, whether it be a young or a mature tree, it does need to replant a tree of similar size, either in the same place, if possible, or in a different place. And the main issue with that, of course, like many great laws in this country, not just in Yerushalayim, the main tricky issue here is enforcement. And the Jerusalem Green Fund, together with the part of the municipality that is very pro trees and are people working towards keeping the city green, are creating new policy, municipal policy, to preserve that and to prevent as much as possible the cutting down of mature trees and only planting young trees, as opposed to what you're supposed to do, which is if you take down a mature tree, you need to plant a mature tree. Because, for example, if I said before about the carbon intake of a tree is significant, obviously it is way more significant if it's a mature tree as opposed to a baby tree. Just for sheer size and amount of, let's say, leaves.
But the city doesn't put back the trees. We've had so many right in front of our building.
So I'll just,
we have a huge sidewalk. I
it's
have a
an
4
issue.
meter wide sidewalk and no tree. And I don't know if it's slated to ever put back the tree. There's one missing down the street. There's like, how do we get the city to put the trees back?
It's kind of like a cancer, and I definitely hear that. And so that's why we're trying to create better policy that includes more enforcement for that not to happen, and only in places where it's absolutely necessary then to really have a new tree replanted in it. I will say that anybody, you don't even have to be a resident, but to utilize the 106 application and download it on your phone, the app for Jerusalem 106, and you can report every time you see a spot for a tree that's empty, or let's say, like you said, has a stump, but there's no new tree there or whatever it was. You can report that and request that a tree be planted back in that spot. You can report people cutting down trees, whether legally or illegally. Like if you don't know, and you rather report it and find out, okay, it was legal, as opposed to, not. So it's better always to report those things, and you can do it on the app, or of course you can actually call on the phone, call 106 and choose Jerusalem. But that is like an enormous tool that everyone here has the ability to utilize, as long as you have a phone of any kind, and to really be the eyes and ears on the ground in the city and report things and ask questions of the area. And I will say from personal example and usage, I'm like a 106 junkie. Really, I use it all the time, and I'm constantly reporting things. And because I also work a lot with the area, I can also see the results, like the behind the scenes results, how often things are reported, and how much pressure that puts on the municipality to actually do what the resident is saying to do. Hey man, replant my tree. If you report it all the time, they're going to plant that tree, for example. So it's a great tool. But yeah, Tamar, I wanted you to be able to answer the first part of her question. Thank you, Marla.
We had the bad experience of 50 trees being pulled out as they were putting in a sewer line, and they decided to put in a biking path, and they took out 50 trees, and we couldn't stop them. So I wish your zoning, your rules should come in quicker. We can maybe save something. The zoning of the area was turned from green to orange, but orange is an institution. We have had twice to fight apartment buildings where they want to change the zoning from institution to apartment buildings. And then the city wants to add, because it's apartment buildings, it will add additional institutions in addition of its own there, so that you get an enormous amount of building. That is why I'm trying to exchange the land. I realize I'll never be able to stop this process unless I can change it back to green with them being able to build somewhere else. But that is something we hope, a fantasy that so far has not happened, but I hope that maybe we can. If they realize that the green is important, and with Batel and Nomi and others' help, maybe we can convince them that this is worth shifting, but I don't know.
Yeah, Jeff.
Tamar, you talked about success in 3 rounds so far. I'm wondering, did that require you to go to court, or were you able to just convince the municipality?
I don't know. We had to appeal the Vada Mechozit's decision and go up to the Moetzah Artzit. The Moetzah Artzit, well, the first time we did end up in court. The second time the Moetzah Artzit approved it. The third time the Moetzah Artzit approved it. So far, we did have to go to court on one occasion. And right now we're assuming that we may also need to go to court after the Vada Mechozit, but we don't know. I hope not, but we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The process is quite expensive, though. I'm learning as you go, each step, up the ante.
Yes. I wanted to just share 2 other Jerusalem forest stories, if I may. Do I also have ability to share screen? Yes, I do. So if you would allow me to do so, I will. I'll just say before I share screen, in the Jerusalem Green Fund, we have other activists like Tamar who are fighting for other forests or even other parts of the same forest. That each area really needs its set of activists and residents that live nearby it or not even nearby it, but that love it, that respect it, that want to keep it the way it is. And you have to have the person who's like leading that and really pushing it forward all the time. And also their eyes need to be on the ground all the time. So sort of around the hill on the other side kind of Har Nof, we have another part of the Jerusalem forest where we have a member of the Green Fund named Yitzhak Israeli, and he's fighting a different part in Har Nof as well, where they want to build, the area wants to build sort of like a grouping of school buildings on a dead-end street that already is very narrow, which would, the first thought would be like, oh, a dead-end street, building lots of schools on the bottom. How are all those little vans or big vans and parents going to drive their kids and drive back, and it's going to be sort of like a traffic nightmare. And not to mention, it's going to take up something like, how many, like 8 or 10, I don't remember anymore, 10 dunams of the edge of this forest, at the edge of the neighborhood, going straight down the hill into the Har Nof forest and taking up another chunk of it. And after working on this for many years and bringing the Society for Protection of Nature in Israel, who've gone there and have done an ecological survey of that particular area of the forest, who found a lot of value in that one little patch, specifically flora and fauna, and it being of significance and suggesting not to develop that land. It's still an ongoing process. And this fellow, he lives right there on the edge, and he's constantly seeing what's going on. And so the moment he sees a tractor in the shetach on the ground, he's on the phone and he's on it and he's calling the municipality like, what is this? Who allowed this? They don't have a permission to be there, and he's on it all the time. And we've been to court. He's been to court. We've been together with him in support with a bunch of other residents of Har Nof and other members of the Jerusalem Green Fund to have more, power and numbers in the courthouse. And it's not a simple task. In that particular case, it was taking the municipality to court, saying that they did not follow due process, et cetera, et cetera. So these sorts of issues can really touch upon all kinds of aspects, whether it's a due process issue or or fighting just from an ecological point of view. Like, they are two different things, and depending on the case, you could utilize one of them or both of them in order to preserve the forest in the end. So that's another story. And then I will share my screen and just show you, because the pictures are gorgeous, so why not? Let's see if it works. We have another group of residents who, no, wait, that's not right. Sorry. We have another group of residents who live in Neve Yaakov. In Neve Yaakov, there's a forest that actually sort of is sandwiched between Neve Yaakov and Pisgat Ze'ev. Here it is. Now I can share, I believe. Share. A group of residents that are pretty hardcore. Here we go. Saving. Tell me if you see it.
Not yet. Oh, no. Yes.
Yes.
This is the Mir Forest. As I said, nestled between Neve Yaakov and Pisgat Ze'ev, way northeast of the city. And there's also an issue with the KKL, with the Keren Kayemet for Israel. The Keren Kayemet is different than the JNF. I'll just put that out there. The JNF is an NGO, and the KKL is not an NGO. It is sort of a government wing here in Israel, and it's, in the end, it needs to answer to the government and government policy. So the KKL has a policy, said that we're here to, build forests, plant forests, preserve forests, but only up until a certain degree. So in their laws, they have a clause, as it were, that says we can preserve a forest, but we have to, if needed, give up 5% of that forest if there should be a building plan that is necessary on the edge of that forest to whatever yishuv or city that it is, right? So in our case, it's Har Nof. In our case, it's the Mir Forest and several other places. They could sort of, as it were, to relent 5% of the forest because there is a building plan. And so this kind of space you would lose. So the Chevre in Neve Yaakov, who are fighting to preserve this, are talking exactly about that 5%. And so in this matter, the KKL is not an objector to this plan, and they're sort of silent in this fight, which is super unfortunate, obviously. I think I have another photo, which is sort of a tragedy, because I would say the largest herd of Israeli gazelles that are living naturally live right here. Let's see. I'm just going to show you like this. Here it is. There's a pretty gazelle. They live in this forest. And the reason for that, by the way, is sort of what Tamar alluded to in the very beginning when she was talking about how the Jerusalem forest was 4,700 dunam or something, right? And now it's a bunch of polygons. And the reason why that's significant is that we used to have what we call natural corridors or ecological corridors. And the reason why corridors are really, really important is because it enables wildlife to travel from one area to another area in a continuous way. When I have polygons, okay, in other words, blotches, let's say, you sprinkled red wine on your white shirt on Friday night and you look all speckled, okay? So if you have all those speckled, then it looks like a polygon. If it was one big wide stain, okay, maybe it's harder to get out, easier to get out, I don't know. But you can imagine in that way, putting all the sprinkles together in one spot would be easier to maintain. Again, we're going back into forest, right? In other words, is a larger area, for example, this gazelle, to run around in. And they can go from areas that are hotter to areas that are cooler, areas that have water, areas that have shade or food base or whatever it is. the larger expanse that these animals, for example, have to roam, and also not only animals, but also all the plant life, right? Because we were speaking earlier about the biodiversity in the forests. They need more expanse in order to procreate, whether, again, it's the animal or different plant life. And that it should be continuous and not blotches here and blotches there, because the gazelles are not going to cross the street. And if they try to, we know what happens. So, for example, in this forest, it's critical, because this forest, although is sandwiched by these two neighborhoods, it does eventually let out and goes all the way east toward the Dead Sea, or Nachal Zimri, which leads towards the Dead Sea. And that's really, really critical. So, like I said, this group of residents that are really working hard towards that. I'll just show you another. Here's a picture that. Do you see this map now? Let's see if you see this. See that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you can see here the forest all the way, not where the red thing is, but that was showing something a little bit different. But you can see here where the forest sort of sandwiches between these neighborhoods. And it's complicated, because all these neighborhoods are really, they're getting this sort of upwind of the forest clear, clean air, especially all the people who live on the edge, who really breathe it and feel it on a daily basis. Like the woman who's really running this campaign in Neve Yaakov, one of our friends of the JGF, she moved to Neve Yaakov something like 30-something years ago, because she has respiratory issues, and she thought, if I live on the edge of the forest, surely I'll be able to breathe better. So even for her personal health, she understood that this is essential, and you know, really, really critical. I'm just going to see this. You can see this slide as well, and right. So that's a different sort of perspective of seeing the Mir Forest, which flows out to Nachal Zimri. And the other picture here of the Wildflower Sanctuary, I'll just throw in about that as well, is if we're speaking about green space and preservation of biodiversity. So we have a different resident friend, also lives in Neve Yaakov, a fabulous Dr. Anna Gonieva. She has spent also upwards of 20 years preserving flora from specifically northeast Jerusalem, bulbs, seeds, all different things, and have created this space to preserve those things in the Wildflower Sanctuary, as we call it. And we're right now at the end, almost the end of blooming season. At the beginning of the season, we had a big event there, which was gorgeous, because the flowers are amazing, all different colors of all different species, and they're preserved here. And she collects the seeds and is able to replant them and also catalog them for not posterity, but like, you know, to have an official cataloging of what is really native to the northeastern wing of Yerushalayim, to really like bolster that and to preserve it. So there's all kinds of things going on, and all these sort of different aspects of the forest and the Nachal and the Wildflower Sanctuary in this part of town are really giving life to all the neighborhoods in that area, but also that you know, the eastern winds that come into the city from, you know, from the east inward. So it's also preserving and giving better health to anything west of it as well. So it's another sort of aspect of a different forest in a different part of Yerushalayim, with more activists who are really working day and night to keep it that way, to preserve everybody's health, not just their own. And yeah, so there's sort of other projects that we're involved in about forests. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, so I have some questions, probably kind of very lay people questions. Is there a contiguous path between the ayalot that we see in our remote forest, which we want to go out to as part of this unit, all the way up into the Mir Forest? Batel, can the Ayalot wander all the way up through there, or they get stopped because of some roads? In other words, it's
Yeah.
different packs of the Ayalot. Ah,
Yeah, the Tzvaim, Tzvi, Tzvaim,
Tzvaim,
not
yeah.
Ayalot, but they're different. That's all the way northeast, and that's sort of like northwestish. There isn't an area where those areas join.
Neat.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's because of urban expansion and things like that. Although the climate is different in those two spaces.
Right.
Not
And
to
that
say
was
that there wouldn't have been originally. Obviously, it was all connected before remote was built. But
right.
yeah.
And
That's a good
when you
question.
were just now talking about the east, and saving and having the forest there, the east is where the Khamsin, the desert winds come in, and the dust. Yeah. So having the forest there, I wouldn't say prevents, but probably lessens the amount
Yes.
of
desert
dust
dust.
and coming
Absolutely, yeah.
into Jerusalem. So that's a really vital fight to keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah. I didn't understand that until just now. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't even say it exactly, but that is very true. I personally live on the edge of the desert, and I don't have a forest that blocks the sand, and it's yucky.
Yeah, and if you
For
have
lack of a better word. Excuse me. But yeah. So forests are very, very critical. The fact that there is a forest that sort of transitions towards eastward, towards the desert in the northeastern corner of the city is critical. It's really amazing. Okay, I want to just give space for anybody else who might have a question or a comment of that sort. Okay. Okay, so I think because we are in Zoom and not in person, so naturally, and I thought about this as well, the program will be, end earlier than if we were all together, and that's okay. Traditionally, we're supposed to finish by 12. So, people come, people schmooze. We're also excited to have the schmooze, which is difficult. And we can leave the cameras open and people can schmooze if they want after in the end. That's fine too. But that's why
we were
it's much
also
earlier.
supposed to have muffins and coffee and tea.
That's the schmooze, right?
That's everybody can go and get something from the kitchen and bring it back.
BYO muffins.
Yeah.
Or maybe we'll give
Where's
you
your
two the
muffin?
next time.
In the freezer.
Yeah, when we go out on the walking tour. Yeah, we should do that.
Okay, so that's a good segue. The walking tour. It is highly unlikely. I don't want to be like a negative Nancy, but
Let me get my
I
phone.
think it's unlikely for next week. I don't necessarily think that even we can set a different date at this moment. I just feel like it's too uncertain. But I do want, and I will speak to also to our friend who will be leading that tour in the Mitzpeh Naftoach part of the remote forest. Hillary Hertzberg, for anybody who might know her, fabulous. She's that person who's leading and has led for many years the campaign to save Mitzpeh Naftoach. She's remarkable. And so we're going to have to reschedule it. And she had suggested, because we're only getting into the warmer months, and to be walking around in the forest in the heat of the day maybe isn't so fun. So we're going to toy with the idea as it does get hotter. Maybe it'll be a early evening, so when it's already cooler but still daylight. But we're going to have to kind of wait and see with that when we're going to be able to do it, because we don't want to cancel it all together because it's too special and it's too beautiful, really. And we owe it to everybody, so we really want to make it happen. So if everybody has patience, we will find a time and just kind of sit with the idea of maybe doing an early evening tour of the forest there. Okay. Eileen, would you like to say some closing words?
Yeah. Tamar, have you been in contact with Hillary? Do you speak with Hillary?
I know Hillary quite well, but from our fights a while ago, I haven't been in touch with her recently.
Yeah. So, she has a lot of amazing stories and her story, how she saved our remote forest time after time against projects and builders and going to the municipality and going to courts and coordinating the residents of remote. She has a lot of that under her belt, Hillary, and I'm sure would be thrilled to share that information with you. I can send you her phone, her contact details. And do you have it?
We've also worked with we've worked with thousands of people in our community too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would be very happy to speak to her again. We haven't been in touch for a while.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to give 2 minutes on my story with the Jerusalem Green Fund because it leads into where we are today. I originally became aware of the Jerusalem Green Fund when I was working and teaching at the Hebrew University, the School of Nonprofit Management and School of Nonprofit Organizations and Management. And I used to send my very best greenie interns over to the Jerusalem Green Fund, and they came back with wonders and surprises and all kinds of really, really good work that the Jerusalem Green Fund supported and still does need interns. The Jerusalem Green Fund, I know, with working with lots of NGOs in Jerusalem and around the country for years with over like 200 students, the budgets and how they work and so on and so forth. And the Jerusalem Green Fund is a very, very tightly financially controlled NGO or NPO, depending how you want to define it. We learned that academically, how to define it. And very small staff, working staff, impassioned, doing a lot of projects, almost an unbelievable amount of good green things, according to what Batel said in the beginning, on different levels, and engaging volunteers as much as they can, and even volunteers to phone people to come out to events and protests and so on and so forth. That's why. So then after I finished my degree in teaching in the university, I went and worked for the Jerusalem Green Fund for about 2 years and took a hiatus and then came back as part of the board and still watching and trying to develop these sorts of projects, all kinds of projects. It's in a very, very extremely limited budget, in my opinion, of what I've seen as far as NGOs in and around Israel, in the world, actually. So I always give lots of accolades to Naomi and her choice of people like Batel, that it's not even like, I think, a 24/7. I think it's like a 29/7, the way, except for Shabbat, that Batel works and always available. And the other few, like handful, I don't even know if it's a handful anymore of employees and leading projects all the way from Jerusalem now into the biosphere. Two new friends of ours were going to participate from Sor Hadassah, opening up. The biosphere opens up a wide variety of communities all encircling Jerusalem, and that's really terrific. And all of it's done is by, most of it, a lot of grant writing, a lot of foundations, but by stakeholders and stakeholder participation, which I say is very minimal and kind of a cup of coffee. Oh, wait, I can tell you, I went and bought a friend of mine a birthday cake the other day, and the stakeholdership was the same amount per month as the birthday cake. I was flabbergasted at English cake that's what it was. So we really encourage people to as we say, take a seat at the table. It's participatory involvement, and you can do it at any level. Either you can take a part by becoming active or just listening in, or there's no requirements of it except this very minimal amount of donation, tax recognized donation per month. And then it's kind of getting it's for me, sometimes I'm more active and sometimes I'm less, but I always feel, because of the stakeholdership and everything that Jerusalem Green Fund does, that I'm taking part and the greening part of my city and keeping it green and keeping lots of efforts going and growing. So I certainly encourage that. Batel's the lady or me to speak about it. And in thinking about how to perpetuate and make the Jerusalem Green Fund sustainable, Naomi Tsur and I went around looking for a suitable office space to run volunteers out of, to have volunteers coming to have events, which we would have this morning if it wasn't for some externalities or extraneous things going on in our society. And it's a beautiful building. We're actually in there with the Society of Protection of Nature in Israel, and we have a little office space there that we rent. And so it's also a very nice meeting place and a good place for events. We have our annual general meeting there and so on and so forth. So I strongly encourage it, because Jerusalem Green Fund does have a lot of their stakeholders are just people that are too busy doing something but that can sit and say, I am doing something to improve the environment for Jerusalem and area and the green and the sustainability. And that's what this very small amount of money, 75 shekels it is, per month, does. So anybody that isn't and has any other questions about it, you can contact Batel. She can, like I said, she can go into her hour 25 and 26 and talk your ear off until you're about what the Jerusalem Green Fund does until hour 29 per day. So I certainly, I like to make you blush, Batel, but it's true. Young and full of energy and doing all kinds of things, not only for the Jerusalem Green Fund, but for her community where she lives. And of course, all of her children and family. So that's what I would say. If anybody's interested, again, it's really a minimal amount these days, like one English birthday cake kind of thing, which I discovered the other day. And and we'll look forward to, I think all of you are signed on. In the meantime, Batel, are we having an EGF in English? Because we have EFG, English focus groups, that I saw a very interesting topic coming up, but I don't know if we fixed. So it used to be about every 6 weeks, we would invite a guest speaker on a particular topic and have an English focus group. At that time, some of my students that had gone back abroad were still participating in it. And it's usually a vital interest and of importance to keeping Jerusalem green. And so I don't know what the next topic is. You sent it to me, but I've forgotten. But I don't think we've set a date for it. So that's just something that another one of a multitude of activities that the Jerusalem Green Fund engages in. And it's just...
I'll answer that right now.
Okay.
It is true. We have another program that we run for the English-speaking community called the English Focus Group. And we do have a date set. Actually, the next topic of our English Focus Group is going to be on green pilgrimage and carbon offsetting, which means, pilgrims from all kinds of different religions from around the world come to Jerusalem to visit for their own religious reasons, and how can we make that process more green? We'll get into the details of that because it's fascinating. And it also happens in other pilgrimage cities around the world, and what we're doing in cahoots with other cities and other religions, and carbon offsetting, which means for most of the time when we fly, we fly, we use a bunch of carbon to get from A to B. How do we offset that? In other words, how do we do something positive in lieu of the pollution that went into flying from A to B? And that's going to be on June 9th. June 9th, and that's an evening. Also, it's always been a Zoom, June 9th in the evening from 8 to 9 p.m. So you can mark your calendar if you'd like to do that, but I will send you all an email about it as well. So thank you. Thank you, Tamar, for being an awesome speaker.
Yeah.
And thank you
And for all your
coming,
efforts, Tamar. Wow.
for participating. I learned a lot. I hope everybody learned a lot. And you can be in touch with me. You all have my email because you've received emails from me. Any questions moving forward about anything that was spoken of, or if you have a suggestion for something for the future, I'm so excited to get suggestions. And that's it. I'll leave the Zoom open for a few minutes if anybody wants to hang out. But thank you.
Batel?
Yeah. Hi, Richard.
Hi. So I'm going to assume that we're going to postpone the meeting with the municipality that was originally
Yeah.
scheduled for next week and leave it up in the
Right.
air until the war is over.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm in touch with you on time.
Okay, great. All right, just want to be sure we're on the same page. Okay,
Yeah.
have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Stay safe, Richard. Say hi to Jean.
No, I just
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
want to thank
Yeah.
Jeff for introducing us to this group. It's very
Mm.
exciting. Horizons.
Thank you, Millers. Thank you, Millers, for coming.
Yeah.
I enjoyed your
pleasure.
questions.
We might have a speaker.
Yeah.
We know a woman who teaches what is it?
Biodynamic.
Biodynamic agriculture. She teaches people how to grow food without sprays and all kinds of stuff of that nature.
Mm.
And she's working as well as a consultant on individual gardens, Mir Forest and things. She just started. We did a course
We did
with her in the in a moshav, but she's moving into Jerusalem to do more stuff in town.
Who's that?
Her name is Yael Stein, but what's her middle name? Yael, I forget her middle name, but I mean, she has, a dual last name, but it's Yael Stein. She was a physician at Hadassah. She's no longer in the field, and she's moved on to agriculture. And she knows a lot about EMF. So, EMFs meaning, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I do.
Electromagnetic frequencies and she lectures on that as well. So she would be a good person for you to to be in touch with. I'll speak to her about it as well.
Great.
Oh yeah. I love finding more kindred souls and
yes,
different subjects. Yeah. Nice.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm going to shut us down
Bye.
at this point. All
Thanks,
right.
Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Patty.